Duet Expenses Overview. Choosing an expenses system? Watch this overview of setup and use to see if Duet works for you. Duet's expense application can save on entry and analysis time, capture receipts to avoid their loss, and provide properly coded transaction data for your back-office systems. People in the same organization often differ in the way they approach expenses. However you work, we think Duet Expenses has an option that will suit you and the needs of your organization. This video shows how data used in entry is structured, how rules governing expense entry are managed. We will look at a user entering expense data on a mobile device, and a manager performing the costing and approval processes. Finally, reports and data output for transfer to a back-office system. Duet features: cloud-based, no installs or user updates. Mobile, tablet and desktop. Automatic resize. Offline working if no internet. Standalone, or add mobile functionality to your existing back-office systems. Import and export of data. CSV, Excel, API. No contract, pay-as-you-go, per user. For this overview, we will use smartphone, PC or tablet views of Duet. Since Duet resizes on whatever device you choose, all of this work could be done on either device. I'm signed in as our admin user, who creates and manages the system configuration. This is our demo company, Total Service Solutions. Under the Organization option, we can examine the setup needed for the expense application. There are rules controlling the way the system operates. Under the Expenses branch, you can specify if approval of the expense is required. If needed, default approvers can be set. This default can be overridden individually for each expense user. To see the settings for each user, let's open Users in the Administration section. Here is our user list, manually entered or imported. Let's look at user, Rachel Benson. Rachel is a department manager. She enters her own expenses, but part of her role is to approve expense entries for other staff. Under the Expense section in Rachel's user setup, we can define if expense approval is required for Rachel herself. Also, we can set Rachel as an approver for others. Rachel can also manage expense reports. We will now look at user, Steve Bose, who works mainly on his mobile. In Steve's setup, expense approval is required, but he does not act as an approver for others. We can define who approves Steve's expenses. Let's return to the admin menu. Okay, now we have some users, let's look at controlling what they enter. The better the control, the less entry errors there will be. When it comes to successfully deploying a smartphone-based application, it's better to let users choose items from a list rather than typing. Duet uses dimensions to help you achieve this. Let's go back to Organization. Duet allows dimensions to be defined. These hold manually created or imported data that our expense users can utilize during entry. You can use up to 5, but our demo company today only needs 2. Dimension 1 has been named Project. It will have some links to Dimension 2, named Phase. This enables filtered selection of phase, based on the selected project. Here you can see the links between project and phase, also links between project and users. In this way, we can control which users can select a project, then which phases are available under that project. Let's return to the admin dashboard and examine that dimension data. This will help you understand where the data is coming from when you see it being selected in expense entry. Open Administration. Select Projects. Here, we can see a list of projects that have been input or imported. In the same way, a list of phases has also been created. Going back to Project, I can use the Item menu to select the phases linked to this project. The same link selection can be applied to users. Only selected users will be offered this project as a choice during entry. Let's return to the admin menu and open the Expenses section. A key part of setting up the expenses application is to define the types of claim and expense that we will be dealing with. Your expenses can be grouped into claim types for different types of expenditure, e.g. reimbursement if you paid out of pocket, credit card, petty cash or may be purchased on company account. You may also wish to have foreign currency expenses separated into their own claims. Let's look at the structure of a reimbursement claim type. Name for the claim type. Description. Currency. Account code, if linking to the back-office system. Select if reimbursement is required against this type of claim. We recommend you refer to Duet's online help system for accurate field choices and values. Let's go back to our menu and look at expense type. Multiple types, e.g. food, hotels, mileage, can be defined, each with differing entry rules. Let's look for instance, at hotels. Key information can be controlled here. Is a receipt required for this type of expense? Is quantity editable? The quantity label, in this case we have input nights. The price entered is unit price, price including tax. Default amounts can also be set up. You can make the dimension data, project and phase, mandatory for this type of expense. Return to our admin menu. OK, the system is now ready to use. We have users, rules, dimensions, claim and expense types. Steve can now start entering expenses on his smartphone. First, I'm going to log in as Rachel, on our PC or tablet view, and as Steve, on the mobile device. This is the Duet dashboard view. Rachel has access to multiple Duet applications, Steve only has timesheets and expenses. Let's process Steve's expenses through entry and approval. The Expenses application enables users to easily record expenses incurred using a choice of convenient input methods. Quick Entry enables a draft expense entry to be quickly recorded. Expenses shows a list of all current entries and allows them to be edited, or new expenses to be created. Claims lists our expense claims. Allows draft expenses to be attached, or new expenses created from within a claim. When ready, you can submit claims containing your expenses for approval. Submitted claims are reviewed by a manager and either approved, or declined. The manager may also comment on an expense, e.g. to request further information. Let's see Expense Quick Entry in action. Quick Entry is ideal to record an expense as it occurs, and photograph the receipt to avoid losing it. First, Steve selects the appropriate claim type. Next, select the expense type. We will choose hotel accommodation. Enter any reference, perhaps this is the receipt number. The where from field could be the supplier. This field remembers what you type, so you can enter manually, or choose from a list of previous entries. Next, add an attachment or take a photograph. You can see a red asterisk against this field. It's been marked as mandatory, within the expense type. Describe what the expense was for, enter manually or pick from a list of previous entries. Enter the date expense incurred. Input the quantity. The unit setting for expense type hotel is set to nights, so input the number of nights. Let's enter 2 nights, at £125 per night. The system will calculate total and any tax. You can also enter any analysis details. These are the dimensions, project, and phase that we looked at during setup. Steve chooses a project from the list. He selects a phase allowed by the links that have been defined. Notes can also be entered. Save our expense. The Expenses option presents us with a list of our current pending expense entries, allowing us to manage these prior to claim and submission. This method may suit those who like to collect their expenses at the end of the month, and enter in one session. It's also appropriate for analyzing entries that may appear here, as a result of importing from a credit card statement. Adding a new expense in this section is the same process as Quick Entry. Simply click the plus button to add. Each expense entry carries an item menu that will offer us some options. We could delete the entry. Add the entry to a claim. Create an entry line. Examine the expense history. History shows creation and changes of status. We can also view any attachments. And, importantly, clone expenses. While Steve was at the hotel, perhaps he incurred other expenses related to this visit. Food, parking, mileage, all of these may add costs to the same project and phase. Rather than enter everything again, we can use the clone tool to copy the expense, then simply edit the parts we need to. Very useful for recurring expense items. Now, we will look at making a claim for these expenses. To make it easier to follow in this video, I'll switch over to the tablet view. Open the expenses section. We have existing expenses for Steve, it's time to submit them in a claim. Let's create a new claim. Click plus to create. Choose a claim type, let's get Steve reimbursed. Enter a reference for the claim. Duet will now look for any unclaimed expense entries belonging to the reimbursement claim type, allowing you to add them to this claim. You can use the multi-select tool to tick or untick the expenses you want to add to the claim, or tick manually. Now we can see our claim being built up. These are all the expense items that have been added to our claim. The red minus icon will allow you to remove any expense line from this claim. It does not delete the expense, just returns it to the pending expense list. Under this claims items menu, we have options. Delete this claim. Submit for approval. View claim details. Review history. Add further expenses, either manually or selected from a list of unclaimed expenses of this type. Create a new expense from within this claim. Review and enter any comments. Manage attachments. We could now submit our claim. Before submitting, Steve also has other expenses to submit, for purchases made using the bank account, credit card and company purchase accounts. Click the plus icon to add another claim. Choose the claim type, let's select expenses that use the company bank account. Add reference. Confirm the expense items. And save. The new pending bank claim appears in the claims list. Let's add again. This time, items purchased on credit card. Reference and save. Lastly, deal with any expenses incurred on company accounts. Now, we have all our claims for the period completed and ready to submit. This was quite a complicated example with many different claim types. If you only have out-of-pocket expenses, it's just a single claim with multiple items on it. Steve now proceeds to submit claims. Submit the bank. You can see the claim status changes from pending to submitted. Repeat for the other pending claims. Submit our reimbursement claim. Our claims are now submitted. Let's look at Manager Rachel Benson performing the approval process on Steve's claims. I'll sign in as Rachel on the desktop. Steve has now submitted his expense claims. On Steve's smartphone, we can see the claims here, in their submitted, declined or approved state. On Rachel's desktop, dashboard notifications have been updated. These notifications can also generate an email to Rachel, in case she is not currently signed into Duet. Rachel can open and process the claim from notifications. She can also progress these under the expenses approval list. Let's do the approval from the list. Rachel opens the approvals option. As this lists claims from all the staff she approves for, it could be a long list. So, we can use the search tool to filter for all claims from Steve. The list reduces, matching records as she types. To process a claim, Rachel can open the claim, using the right chevron on the claim header. We can see the header detail, and the list of expense items it contains. Each line can be approved or declined here. Alternatively, Rachel could use the item menu to manage the claim. Review the expenses within the claim. View the history. The expense items and submission dates. Look at any comments attached to the claim. View attachments belonging to the expense items. Having reviewed this claim made against the company bank account, Rachel decides to approve it. She can add a note if required, for Steve. Save the approval. Rachel is informed of the number of expenses and value that she is approving. This claim is now removed from the list awaiting approval. Rachel moves on to the claim for a hotel expense. Reviews the expense line. She decides to decline this expense. Saves and enters a reason for the decline to notify Steve. The declined item is also removed from the list. Open the next claim. Review, approve and save. OK, the final claim. This one is more complex. It's a reimbursement claim containing multiple expenses. Open from the claim header, we want to review and make decisions by expense line. Having viewed each expense, Rachel is happy with most items, but needs to decline the expense item for corporate training catering. She declines that expense and approves the others. It's a partial approval. The comments option can be used to describe the reasons for decline. Save. Mark the claim approved. Steve needs reimbursement for the approved expenses, but will need to correct issues with declined ones. Rachel saves, approving 3 out of 4 expenses with a total value. The approval list is now clear. Return to the dashboard. Let's move to Steve's mobile. Return to the dashboard and look at what has changed for Steve's view of expenses. There are notifications waiting for Steve. Let's look at those. New notifications regarding the submitted expense claims. Some approved, part approved and 1 declined. Steve can open the claim directly from here, or open claims from his dashboard menu. The status of each claim has been updated. This claim is a bank type. Steve is not awaiting repayment for it. As far as he is concerned, it's been approved, so, using the items menu he can close the claim. It will be removed from the claims screen, unless he selects the action menu option to show closed claims. In the same way, the claim for the credit card can be closed. Open the item menu and close the claims. Also, expenses incurred on the company account can be closed. Now, Steve is left with claims that were either declined or partially approved. Let's decide what to do with those. We have a declined company credit card claim here. Let's look at comments. We can see why it has been declined. Steve can add a comment and resubmit the claim to attempt approval again. Or, accept that he has this one wrong and close the claim. The remaining 2 items. Open the items menu on this declined credit card claim. Opening the comments, we find an analysis code is needed. Steve adds the code and saves. He resubmits the claim. The claim has been submitted to Rachel. The claim history will now also show the original submission and decline. Finally, we are left with the partially approved claim. Steve can see the expenses that were approved and the item that has been declined. Let's open the claim. Open the item menu on the declined expense. Steve will be paid for the other approved expenses, but still wants repayment for this declined expense. He can choose Remove Expense. This will return it to the expenses pending list. From there, Steve can correct the problem and add again to a new claim. Let's remove. OK, the claim status is now fully approved. As this is a reimbursement claim, Steve can leave it here until repayment has occurred. The item menu can then be used to mark repaid. This closes the claim. We are now left with the one submitted claim awaiting approval. Going back to the dashboard, if we open the expenses list, we will see that our declined expense has returned, ready to begin the workflow again. Let's return to the dashboard. We have now completed a full cycle of expense claim and submittal. The application offers reports to help you manage expenses and claims. Open the reporting menu. Your report menu is based on the modules that you have active. Let's run one of these on the desktop. For example, the expense summary. Run report. You can define report filters to select the data that you need. The report can be output to Excel and CSV formats. This concludes our overview of the expense application. Thank you for watching.